Ukraine needs to find a way around this peace deal that the Americans are proposing. So, yes, I think it's more to do with, as I said, the fact that Donald Trump seems to be, at least publicly, from what we're being told, losing interest in finding a peaceful settlement, and that Zelensky needs to really bring something to the table. So I think the Ukrainians are trying to work out what they can bring to the table. I don't think that the strike necessarily is putting pressure on Zelensky per se in terms of wanting to find peace. I think it's merely Putin showing yet again that he doesn't actually want peace, that the Russians don't want peace, and that Russia has the capacity to strike Kyiv and Kharkiv as well. Donald Trump wants to do a deal as quickly as possible. He has this 100 days idea that he has to achieve peace in 100 days. And so the easiest way to achieve that is to coerce Ukraine into a corner. Europeans seem to be procrastinating in terms of whether they actually support Ukraine or not. There's certainly reports coming out today that British, French, and German representatives have asked Ukraine to concede some territory, whatever that may be, in order to placate the Americans. We'll have to wait and see, but that was always a potential issue that, yes, Zelensky was going to be backed into a corner by America. Ukraine needs American support in terms of intelligence sharing and in terms of weapons and keeping the Americans on side. The Europeans also need the Americans to be on side, at least in the background. So it is necessary for Zelensky to find a deal. It is also potentially very possible that Donald Trump would always push Zelensky in terms of accepting his deal. I think the Ukrainians will propose yet again that, yes, they want peace, but they want the 30-day ceasefire first. They will also propose that they're not going to accept de jure the annexation of Crimea because they would need to have a referendum. Legally, Ukraine cannot accept de jure for the loss of territory unless it has a referendum, and it probably can't do a referendum until the war is over. So that it's a catch-22. They need a ceasefire, or they need to have a peaceful period where they can actually conduct a referendum. It's like an election in many respects. So they will almost certainly propose a 30-day ceasefire. They will almost certainly propose, I suspect, that they de facto recognize that Crimea is not part of Ukraine, but de jure it is, similar in many respects to what's happened in the past in other places. And also they will want further security guarantees, knowing what those security guarantees are actually going to be and that they're spelled out. Ukraine has had a history, we're going back to the Budapest memorandums now of 1994, where Ukraine was told that its borders were inviolate, that America, Britain, France, and Russia would support Ukraine should Ukraine's borders be put under attack by an external power. When they were, the West did very little. So Ukrainians understandably feel aggrieved about this, and so naturally would like to know and have it spelled out what the security guarantees actually would be. And that needs to be discussed. So I think that this is certainly something that the Ukrainians can say. We are for peace. We want negotiations, but we aren't going to do something that is unilateral. It also needs to know what will happen in terms of the loss of territory and what Russia is going to concede in more detail. So this can also be discussed in terms of sitting Russia down and the Americans in terms of a 30-day ceasefire and starting to flesh these ideas out during a time of peace. And as it highlights, the missile attack, along with the missile attacks in Sumy and Kyiv, it just shows that the Russians really do not want peace. And Donald Trump is, frankly, in my opinion, completely blind in regards to believing that Russia really does advocate for peace. I mean, his press secretary has said that he's running out of patience. Donald Trump probably isn't a very patient man, by all accounts. So it may be something that he is considering. If that is the case and America does withdraw Starlink, if America does withdraw in terms of intelligence sharing, if America, although it already probably has withdrawn its military support, then yes, Ukraine is going to have a very difficult time because Europe is not ready for this situation. So it is certainly a lot of pressure that's been put on Zelensky. I think that, as I said, that was always how Trump was going to act. He wasn't going to pressure Putin. He can't, in my opinion, mostly because America doesn't necessarily have the wherewithal to do it, but also Donald Trump seems to be, if not closely aligned to the Kremlin, then at least more supportive morally or ethically in his mind of Vladimir Putin than he is of Zelensky. So yes, I think that certainly Zelensky is going to be under a lot of pressure, and this is why he has come back to Kiev in order to work with his presidential administration, his advisors, as to what Ukraine can actually do. And this can't really be done on Skype or Zoom or Teams when he's in South Africa, when he's outside Ukraine at least. So it makes sense for him to be in Kiev during this time. If Trump walks away, then we can assume that Ukraine is not going to get much American support. Which means that Europe needs to be ready in terms of supporting Ukraine, or to make a decision as to whether it's going to support Ukraine, which in my mind it should. Donald Trump may come back to the peace deal eventually, or he may decide that Ukraine is unimportant and maintain a closer relationship with Russia. If that's the case, then so be it. But it is certainly going to be difficult for Ukraine should America walk away from the deal because of the intelligence sharing, as I've mentioned. It will be difficult for Europe because Europe has always relied on America for its intelligence. So it will certainly be challenging. But in fairness to Ukraine, it has been challenging for the past year and a bit, and they've done exceedingly well in terms of holding the Russian army for the most part. So the war will likely just continue with announcements being made from Washington, D.C. every so often by Donald Trump saying that he wants peace and he's trying to achieve world peace, and isn't he a great person? He's so intelligent, and all these sorts of things. And the world will just have to get by with what announcements come out of Washington, D.C. every now and then. So I think that, in short, yes, it will be hard for Ukraine. It will be hard for Europe if America was to walk away from the deal. But Donald Trump does allegedly want a Nobel Peace Prize. And if he can't achieve it in Ukraine, he will try for the Middle East. And he could possibly won't achieve it in the Middle East either. I mean, American presidents have tried for peace in the Middle East for decades, and they haven't achieved it yet. So he may come back to Ukraine later, and that's who knows what will happen. At the same time, in 2026, there will be midterm elections. The Democrats may win the House and the Senate, in which case Donald Trump will have to take their interests into account. But this is all predictions, and time will have to tell on this.